You tune into the Sportscast with Brian, Craig, and Jeff. Give you all the sports news you need. We give you outspoken thoughts about all the headlines. We talk baseball, football, hockey, and more. No matter the topic, we cover it. Get ready for the show and keep it outspoken. Keep it outspoken. We keep it outspoken only on the Sportscast. Tune into the Sportscast. With Brian, Craig, and Jeff give you all the sports news you need.
Hey guys, welcome in to the DadBod Podcast, brought to you by the Outspoken Network. Your hosts Brian and Caleb. Caleb, buddy, how's your week been?
It's been good. It's been a long one. I was traveling all week, and then I got back and I had a pile of paperwork on my desk at work, and then it's a Memorial Day weekend, so got hikes and family plans, and today was first day using a charcoal grill. So luckily I didn't burn the house down. I didn't burn the food. I use propane or pellets normally, but I got guilted into being a real dad, as one of my
Been a
coworkers
real
told
man.
me. Be a real man. It's like, I'll be honest, it tasted better, but it took me an hour to get it lit because I don't know what I'm doing. So that's my one beef, is if I was better at this, it wouldn't have been so challenging, but it is what it is. But how about you, man?
Well, my week has been interesting. It's been kind of a long week. The girls of this last week of school, so we had a lot of their ceremonies and awards, and we did a clap out for Darla. She's going into middle school, so she's leaving elementary. We went up there and we were able to clap the fifth graders on out of the school. It's kind of a cool thing, a little bit emotional seeing your girl grow up and your kiddos grow up, but they had a good week. I had an interesting week, and it's kind of roll right into it. I ended up losing my job actually the week before last, so I was able to be home for all these things, which I'm usually not. But so I got fired from my job, and that was tough. Never been fired from a job before, ever. So I can mark that off the bucket, but not the bucket list, but a little check mark. Have you ever been fired for a job? Well, yes, I have.
Why? Yes, I have.
I wasn't too worried because I know I can get a job right off the bat. I'm actually start my new job next week. And I'm a big believer when one door closes, God opens another door for you. So that was tough though, leaving. I've been with the company 6 years, moved my way up into the company to be a supervisor and leaving a bunch of friends there, but not going into details about it, but basically got fired for trying to save some of my drivers, and one of my drivers threw me under the bus, and unfortunately it cost me my job. But so that kind of goes into what we're talking about here, Caleb, on this episode of the DadBod Podcast. We're going to talk about the ups and downs in life, right? We all go through struggles. We all have times in life that knock you on your butt, and how do you handle it? How do you respond to that? My brother-in-law had this idea, and he started it a little while ago. It's called My Goliath, and I love it. The idea of it. And basically, we all know the story of David and Goliath, a giant. David had to face this giant, and he ends up beating the giant. And no one thought he could, right? No one thought he could overcome this. And basically, the idea of My Goliath is everyone goes through struggles, right? I just said that, but what's your Goliath in life? And sharing those stories with others, to sharing those overcoming stories, whether it be loss of a loved one, whether it be drug addiction, whether it be being poor and getting kicked out of your house, and where am I going to go from here, whatever it may be, and overcoming that, and sharing those stories to give others hope. I'm a big believer in that, and I believe sharing stories is a great thing. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn, someone's going through the same situation. You're going to learn you're not alone in this life. You're going to learn maybe you're going to learn something that you never tried before. You know, someone in the same situation, and maybe they can give you some advice, and you'll take that advice and it'll get you out of the situation you're in. So I really am a big believer in sharing stories and telling stories, and that's what I would like to do on is this podcast, as well as the DadBod podcast, is to share their stories. This life is, there's only almost pretty much two things guaranteed in life: taxes, and you're going to go through trials. That's it. Those are two things are guaranteed in life. Okay. Now, how do you handle those things? How do you handle the ups and downs? Is kind of what we're going to get into here. And I'm going to tell you my Goliath story and share with you that. I don't know if you want me to share with you that right this second, or
yeah, like honestly, when we talked about this before, you know, I probably have like one giant story I might share at a later date, but for the most part, like the concept of challenges in life, I think you said it perfectly, where it's not a matter of if but when. It's I don't know a single person that goes through life without some sort of challenge, without and normally they're like, some people will go until they're 30 or 40 and just skate through life, and they make it to the 35 and then they get sick for the first time, like really sick, or they lose a loved one, or they get fired. And it's like the first time they've ever been challenged, and at 35, 40 years old, that's too late. So what I tell my kids a lot when it comes to challenges is the challenges you face are meant to help you grow.
right.
And you don't want to run from them, because if you don't learn from this challenge, the next one's going to look even bigger. So I say roll right into your Goliath and, you know, kind of tell your story. I think that'd be a good place to start.
Awesome. All right. Well, my story, pretty tough one. Me and my wife, we were dating, we got married, and we moved up to Utah. And there's one thing in my life, Caleb, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. There's one thing in my life, and I don't know if anybody else is like this. I don't know if you're like this. There's one thing in my life I knew I was going to be good at, and that's being a dad. I wear that with pride. I'm a great father to my kids. I knew, I don't know what it is. Right? Well, horn here.
Your kids come in the back, they're like, shut up. No,
Yeah. Terrible father. Boo. I don't know what it was. I knew, and maybe it's because I wanted it so bad, right? But I knew that I was going to be a great dad. I could be a crappy everything else. I knew that was my calling, one of my callings in life. And we got married. My wife, we met. We had our own story. We became really close friends. We dated for 2 years, and we got married. Been married happily for 13 years now. When we basically moved up to Utah, and we had a honeymoon baby. Right, I was super excited. We didn't want the honeymoon baby. Like, we didn't like plan it that way. It just happened. Right. We're all right, awesome. Ready to get started. Ready to be a father. And my wife, she was, pregnant. We got up almost to 8 months pregnant, and we ended up losing our child. We had a stillborn. So we don't know why. The doctors don't know why. Doctors don't know what happened. We had a stillborn. And it was the most devastating thing that has ever happened to me. No no adult should have to bury their child ever. So we had a stillborn, and it was tough. It was tough, to say the least. Me and my wife, it's crazy because this could have ended our relationship. We just got married, and we have this dropped on us, and it could have tore us apart. And sometimes that does, unfortunately, to couples. I feel like with us, it made us stronger. We were each other's rock.
Well, why do you think that is? Like, if you look at, because this kind of situation, it's a nuclear bomb on a relationship.
Yeah.
And when I've seen this happen, because unfortunately it happens too often, but it almost always leads to the couple splitting up, because it's like, well, the life that we thought is not going to be, and we're going to leave. So what do you think kept you and Jana from, blasting apart to more or less fusing together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one, I take marriage very seriously, and Jana does too, right? So that bond, we took our vows very hard, and I was in it till the end, But what it was with us was we became best friends before we got married. We became best friends before we dated, and then we dated, and 2 weeks in, I was like, she's the one. I was madly in love, and we had, people say it, we thought, had the fairy tale love. She makes my days better. I know I want to spend the rest of my life with her. It was, not to, she's probably outside the door listening. But I just, and that's what I'm going to teach my kids is you don't got to jump into marriage. You want to, when you're picking someone to spend the rest of your life with, you need to know, you need to be tested. You need to become best friends with them, and I'm going to hopefully teach my kids that marriage is serious, because nowadays the way the world is, that marriage is just a piece of paper, and it's not taken as seriously anymore.
Marriage is a tax write-off.
Yeah, it's a tax write-off. That's it. And it goes kind of back into our last episode. What are your goals in life? My number one goal: marriage and kids, family. So it goes back to those priorities and how are we going to reach them? And but we had ways of coping with it. Still to this day, my daughter would have been going on 13 this year.
Yep.
That's crazy to think about. And there's some days where it's rare, far in between, but there's some days I'll cry about it still. My wife too, and when it first happened, we took a week off of work. Her parents came up there. My parents came up there. We had a lot of support from family. And it's ultimately the reason we moved back to Texas, because we wanted to be by family. We needed this support from our friends and family. And I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but we had what we called it. We just call her name was Daphne, and we'd have be like, babe, I'm having a Daphne day. If my wife told me that, I knew that day I'm the rock. She's gonna cry on my shoulder. I'm gonna be there to support her. And the next day it might have been my turn. Hey, babe, I'm having a Daphne day. I need to cry on your shoulder. We took turns. Literally, it was like that. We might go a couple days without it, and then come home from work, and we're just having a day where you need to cry on a shoulder. But after a year from that, I'm me, Kayla, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky, positive person. And I wasn't at that time. And with a whole year going by, my wife kind of looked at me and goes, why are you being like this? What's going on? You're not the same. I was negative. I had a negative outcome on it. Oh, well, our luck, we ain't going to get it, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not over losing my child. I couldn't wrap my head around understanding a why, right? That's the hardest question to me is why? What's the point? Why God did you tear this away from me? I couldn't understand it in my own understanding, right? Sorry if I get a little emotional on this, but I remember the night after it happened, I had to go back to because we weren't expecting to stay at the hospital, right? So I had to go back to the apartment and grab some clothes because we were going to be. And I remember when I walked in the apartment, I collapsed on the floor and I was crying. Why, God? Why? Because I couldn't wrap my head around it. And sometimes those whys don't ever get answered, right? Sometimes you go through life with trials and they won't be answered until you pass and you're on the other side. But so I said, babe, I can't get over. I'm not going to be able to get over this. And she goes, well, maybe you need to go talk to my brother-in-law, Mark, who's a bishop in the church. And that's what he does. He counsels people. I said, okay, what could it hurt? So I meet with Mark, and we talk about God, and we talk about Jesus, and we talk about prayer, and we pray together. We cry together. My brother-in-law, he lost a niece. I lost my daughter. And I left that meeting knowing I felt Christ for the first time in my life. Knowing that our feeling of a big, huge boulder falling off my shoulders and wanting more of that feeling. So I go back to my wife and I go, that was a great meeting. I feel a lot better. Of course, it's still sad. Never going to, heal altogether, but I want more of this feeling. Ended up getting taught by the missionaries and became a member of the church. And I fast forward to now with my kiddos, and my family and where my life is now. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, if I didn't lose my daughter, I wouldn't be in the church today. I wouldn't be able to raise my kids in the church today. I wouldn't be able to baptize my kids. I baptized all my kids when they turned 8. I look back at it now and I go, that's the reason. And unfortunately, it took that, right? We went to church together growing up.
Yeah.
I was in and out of church after when I turned about 17, 18, I was done with church.
Yeah.
I believed in Christ. That's all I need. I'm good to go. I'm not going back to church.
Checkbox, we're good.
Checkbox, we're good, right?
Yep.
I had no plans on going back. But this led me back to Christ. And during that time, I lost all hope. And losing hope is hard. Because once you lose hope, what's going to carry you out, right?
Yeah.
If you lose hope, it's hard to get that back. And the simple meeting with my brother-in-law there, and to feel the Holy Ghost for the first time, and just know, and I look back at it and go, that's the reason why that I had to go through this, that we had to go through this. And then I look back at it and go, me and my wife going through that together, we can get through anything.
Yeah.
We've been through hell and back. We can get through anything together. So that is my Goliath, overcoming the loss of my child. I have 4 beautiful girls. I'm a girl dad in heart. 5 beautiful girls. One's up in heaven waiting on me. I'll hold her again one day. And that's my Goliath. And loss is tough. Loss is hard. But I believe that sharing these stories, if you've lost a loved one, if you've had to bury one of your children, God bless you. It's tough. But hearing these stories and hearing how we overcome them, and it could be an uplifting experience. Hopefully your Goliath isn't as bad. I mean, people's Goliaths are different, right? We all go through our different struggles and trials in life, and you're exactly right. They're there to teach you something. They're there to get you stronger. And look, and you talk about your kids. being a father and being a parent, we want to shield our kids from all the boo-boos and all the bad parts of life. But if we did that, we're doing a disservice to them.
Yep.
We need to teach them that life's not fair. We need to teach them that sometimes you're going to fall and bust your butt, but it's how you get back up. And I'm a big believer in this too. Failure is a part of success. If you're too afraid of failure, you're never going to try. I've been that way sometimes. I'm too afraid to fail, so I'm just not going to try for it. And that is a terrible idea, because you go look at all these people that have, whether it's fame or whatever they may be. Oprah Winfrey didn't become famous or hit it big until she was like in her 30s, or you hear all these stories like that. So I'm not saying that you're going to be famous. I'm just saying your big break could be around the corner. And if you work hard, you get back up, you fail, you continue to get back up and go with what's working, good things will come. But being afraid to fail is going to keep you from doing it and actually putting an honest effort in.
So with that, like, I mean, you got 4 kids or 5 kids. I got 3. I don't know about you, but I was always terrified. Even, kid 2, kid 3, I was always terrified. And part of life is anticipating the challenges that, are coming. Like, hey, in the military, it's like, hey, I'm getting ready for deployment. So I know what the challenge is going to be. Distance, and the work's going to be hard, and I'm going to be exhausted, and then I'm not going to be there for the family. Or like for the kids level, it's like, I'm going to a new grade, I'm going to meet new people. You can anticipate some challenges that are standard, but
right.
Did you ever anticipate going through that? Like, was there ever a thought in your mind that this kind of thing could happen?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And I mean, what happened to me is something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, right? You just you can't anticipate that. I mean, that's one of my worst fears too. I have 2 worst fears. One is me dying too young, and my kids growing up without me, without a father. You've seen the statistics out there, right? Yeah. The terrible statistics of kids growing up without fathers in the household. And 2, losing another child, right? Don't want to do it. Don't ever want to do that again. And me and God hopefully got a understanding that that doesn't happen again. But yeah, you're right. You can't anticipate other things, like, even losing my job. I didn't see that coming, but
yeah,
I can anticipate, okay, what's my next moves here? What's my next steps here? Food of thought here, kiddos. If you don't go to college, because I'm a big believer in going to college is good if you know why you're going, instead of just spending a lot of money. If you don't go to college, go get a trade. Yep. That's why I got my CDL. I can have a job anywhere I go tomorrow with it. I can get a job like that. So when I lost my job, I wasn't scared about getting another one. I knew that was the easy part. That was the easy part. It was more of the fact that I'm leaving a lot of people that I liked working with and made relationships with over the last 6 years. That was the tough part. Getting a job, I knew the CDL. Boom, I'm gonna have a job tomorrow. I can move halfway across the world and have a job. So, little side note there, but and a lot of this stuff that we talk about too, you can go right back into our first episode. Priorities and life balance. And a lot of this plays into that, Caleb, let me ask you. Let me throw it back to you. How do you handle, situations like this? Situations where, your life may get turned upside down or whatever. Not asking your Goliath, but what's the situation? You've been in that. You maybe all of a sudden had to take a change of course in life, or.
So, unfortunately, there's a thing called catastrophizing for people that have high functioning anxiety. So, unfortunately, I'm like, as everyone that's close to me and everyone that works with me, I'm a planner. I plan for everything.
You are,
And
and I'm not. So
but the thing
I
is
envy you.
the reason I ask that is there's some things you cannot plan for.
Right.
They're like, I don't plan for if, heaven forbid, I lose one of my kids. I don't plan for that.
Something no one wants to plan for, right?
Yeah, you do, like you
Yeah,
make
you
sure
like,
that you.
and you can plan like, you in a perfect world, we all grow up until we're 90 and then die in old age, right?
Yeah.
You can plan for that because death is a part of life. You can plan for that, but planning for that, planning for the other part of it, dying too young, you really can't plan for.
Well, and that's where when I think of, I anticipate resistance. I anticipate challenge, and you know, with like Kelsey's health, Kelsey's going through a kind of a stint right now with her health, and um, I try to be like the sounding board of logic, and when she's going through it and she's facing all these challenges, I try to be the, like, I don't know exactly how this is going to end, but I know how to logically make steps forward. I know how to.
You plan for what might happen ahead, right?
Well,
Like a
and
plan A, plan B, plan C,
yeah, and
kind of thing.
it's more of, I do plan for the worst case scenario. So for Kelsey's current health, she lost her hair the last time she was sick, and then for this next one, or for this one she's going through now, I told her, I'm like, you're gonna lose your hair again, and she's like, well, I don't know, and I'm like, I want you to just say that out loud, that you will lose your hair again, and then if I'm wrong, I hope I am, you'll be surprised and you'll be happy. But if you look at things from this optimistic view that it's just going to work out just fine, no scars, no bumps or bruises, and life is just going to go hunky dory, you will be disappointed.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad you said that, because
I go into things with, I know what the worst case scenario is, I know what the best case scenario is, and I'm going to make sure that the worst case scenario is the farthest way. Like, I will do everything in my power to be on the best case side. So, when I think of work, there's a lot of things I got to put into place. There's a lot of balls I got to juggle. And sometimes just doing a little extra homework, a little extra paperwork, a little extra this, a little extra that. The worst case scenario is here, but because of all that extra effort, that extra focus, that extra investment, well, the worst case scenario is probably never going to happen. You're probably going to get right down the realistic track, right down the middle of the road. The problem is when people don't plan at all and they don't anticipate challenges, they're just like, well, we'll see what happens. And then the worst case scenario happens and then they're devastated. And it's like,
yeah,
you literally just drove off a cliff. Everyone saw the cliff. You just were like, we'll see what happens, And then people could have even poked you and said, hey, there's a cliff that way. You want to slow down? And be like, no, it'll move. And it's so aggravating. But that's really, I don't anticipate challenges. I anticipate outcome. And kind of putting the extra effort in. At work and family life and things like that, if you are proactive against challenges that are in front of you, the challenges that you can see, the challenges you can anticipate, you can turn a bad situation into a good one. But if you just oh, it's no big deal. Like, again, for your situation with your job, like, you can't anticipate losing your job like that, but you can anticipate you're a good driver. You got a CDL. So you have an off ramp, something that
Right.
backs you up, versus how many guys do you know that you've worked with that were absolute jerks, that sucked at their job, that got fired finally, and now they can't get another job because, oh, well, maybe their, certs aren't up to date or their license expired or whatever, because they didn't take care of the things they had to take care of. And now their life's falling apart when if you were just proactive,
Right.
could have avoided
Yeah.
it.
100%. And, yeah, I mean, there was a guy at work, I had to fire him, and he was a 70-year-old guy. So I felt bad firing him because he's 70, but he wasn't getting with the program. He wasn't being coachable. Like, we tried 100 times. I tried, my buddy Craig tried, Sheila tried, other people tried to talk to him. Like, you've got to follow these rules, and if you can't follow these rules, we're going to have to part ways. And I told him one day I had to write him up for something. He lost it. He cussed me out in Spanish and walked out. And I basically called him and said, you can't talk to me like that. You're no longer needed here, basically, pretty much. I had 2 other people there that heard him cuss me out in Spanish because I don't know what he's saying to me in Spanish. But they're like, Brian, that was insubordination, like this guy. So I had to let him go.
You're like, I don't know. He could have said, like, Brian, that beard is amazing. I
It's
really
amazing.
appreciate it.
I love it. It's so good. What's your moisturizer you put in it? I had to let him go, and now no one will hire him because he's 70 years old. And I'm like, dude, if you just listen to me, if you just listen to 100 other people that try to help you, you wouldn't be in this predicament right now. So there's kind of one there, but you're exactly right. I'm what you call, I like to say, a realist. Like, I don't know, my wife seems to be the optimistic person, and I'm trying to be optimistic, but when it comes down to the tough decisions, or or buying this house that we have, I was stressed out. Are we going to be approved for it? And my wife's like, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, but if it doesn't, what's our next steps? What's going to happen? I'm always like I know what the worst case scenario is. I know the best case scenario. I'm going to plan for the worst case scenario, and I'm going to hope for the best.
Yep.
So that way, if it happens, I'm ready for it, right? Instead of just, oh, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. And then crap hits the fan, and
you have no idea if it's going to work out.
You're going, where do we go from here?
Yep.
I think a lot of this too is when we talk about getting knocked down and how do we get back up, and I think it's really big on who you surround yourself with. Who are your friends? When I got married to my wife's family is awesome. I love them. I love my in-laws, my brother-in-laws. They're great. If I have questions, if I have struggles, if I can call them up and talk to them, any of them, they're really good at giving advice and being there. This is a family that, I mean, hey, my niece is having a baptism this day. We're all there. They're all there. They come no matter what. All right, well, we're going to drop it. We're going to be there to show support. And I really love her family. But I think surround yourself with people. Surround yourself with good friends like you, Caleb. We've known each other since high school.
Yeah.
Been friends ever since. Basically a brother to me. Surround yourself with good people. I'm a pretty social butterfly, right? I'm a pretty big.
Yeah.
I can talk. I can make friends with anybody. But I like to have a select few of friends and keep that my close-knit circle. You don't need a lot of friends. You just need some really good friends that you could call them up one day and go, hey, Caleb, I need you to help me bury a body. And they're not going to ask questions. They're going to show up with a shovel.
Call gonna take?
But, it's only happened a couple times. But no, I mean, but being real is you only need a couple friends that is going to, 100%. They've got your back. They're going to be there. They're going to tell you. They're not going to just sugarcoat shit, and they're gonna be honest with you. Hey, man, you'll tell me, shut up, Brian. That was a dumb decision. Well, but you need that, and so that also helps as well. Who you surround yourself with, and I may take this back to parenting, but that terrifies me with my daughter going to middle school next year. Who's she hanging out with? Is she going to keep her close friends? Some of her friends aren't even zoned to the same school. Some of her friends are moving. I'm a big believer in getting her in with a good group because I know how much a bad apple can
spoil
change.
the whole tree.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's also maybe it's another different episode down the road.
Well, I think the My Goliath concept is like a challenge that pretty much knocked you down and like knocked the wind out of you, hit you, and you had to get back up. Another way to look at challenges is like climbing a mountain. So a lot of what we were talking about, like worst and best case scenario, planning, thinking ahead, all that kind of stuff. Going back to like your goals in life, if you have goals that are worth achieving, they're all challenges. So,
right.
Like, I'll be honest, finding my wife was a challenge because I wanted a down-to-earth woman. I wanted somebody that I could, I wanted my best friend. I wanted somebody I could laugh with and, share a life with. But I also wanted somebody that was pure. I wanted somebody that didn't post bikini photos and didn't really care about her appearance. Like, obviously, Kelsey likes to dress nice. She likes to get gussied up or whatever. But, like, her appearance wasn't the most important thing. But, like, the challenge was, like, twofold. It was, like, finding her, but being a man that girl would like.
Yeah.
And something a lot for the young men out there, you really have to look at yourself and say, okay, if I have a goal, this goal will not happen on its own. How do I overcome the challenges? And literally some of the challenges might be you're fat. You are not good with the words and the speakings with the females. And you have to work on that. And it's embarrassing and it's hard and it's challenging.
Got to practice making out in the mirror. I mean,
so
no,
you met me.
Right.
You met me after my nerd phase. And when I say that
was after?
Yes. So before we met, I was
oh man.
Before we met, like a few years before I moved to Texas, I was a short, fat kid with a buzzed haircut, and I looked like Bobby Hill.
Yes. I've seen pictures. That straight up you.
I still remember the first time I made a girl laugh. I was like maybe 10 years old, and I was like, I want to do that again. And that's when I started doing, accents and different impressions and stuff like that. And slowly but surely, then I realized, okay, girls like non-fat guys. Dad bods are in, but they're not in when you're a freaking teenager.
Not when you're a teenager. No.
And part of the challenges are facing those mini Goliaths along the way is actually facing the ugly baby. And the ugly baby is you don't make enough money, you're not attractive, you don't know how to speak to people, you're not confident. Honestly, and this is something a lot of people overlook, your character is crap. Like, the reason why you and me became friends when we were kids is because you actually had like a good head on your shoulders and you were actually a nice person. There was a lot of people that we knew back then that you did not want to trust.
Yeah.
Even as kids. The point is as we are, as you grow up, a challenge is either something that God is making you face because he needs you to grow, or it's a mountain you've set. Here's a simple one. It took me 10 years to buy a house. It's 2024, and everyone knows that it's impossible to buy a house now. Everyone's like, oh, the inflation and interest rates and all that.
Appreciate that.
Well, they were saying that 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and 10 years ago, I tried to buy a house. But part of like that planning for the worst and hoping for the best was that, well, I knew that if I were to buy a house, reach those goals of mine, I needed to make money. Good money, sustainable money. I needed to be able to afford this house, and I needed the house to be able to grow a family. Every time I would try to get in the market, the equation just wasn't right.
Yeah.
By the time I bought this house, I know more about amortization and interest rates and the 10-year treasury curve and like so much about how a mortgage works because I had to grow and build my savings and build my capabilities up in order to afford the house I'm sitting in now. And it's not an amazing house, but it's a house.
Yeah, dude.
You said it.
It's house.
People, they will just give up. They'll get knocked down and they won't get back up. On the flip side, people will see a giant and won't face him. And literally, like, there's no one else that can face this problem but you. And if you don't grab your sling and put a rock in it, then Goliath is just not going to move. He's always going to be there. You have to face these challenges. And in your case, what would have happened to your life if you would have just stopped? Like,
yeah. If my wife, if I kept that negative attitude, I probably wouldn't be married. I don't know how long my wife would have put up with, my negativity, being a downer all the time. And I could have used that excuse and just use it as a crutch my whole life. Right.
And that's the real question. So, like those shows, like a good series, like a sitcom, they'll like have an episode where they'll go back in time and it's like, well, what if they never met?
Yeah.
That's literally the question. If 13 years ago, you would not have gotten over this, or 12 years ago, where would you be right now? Would you have your wonderful girls? Would Jana be waiting out in the house? Would you have the house? Would you be in Texas?
Right.
Would you
Right.
Would you even be talking to me? Would you even be alive? Like,
Right.
the military is obviously littered with stories of suicide.
Yeah.
People, they lose their purpose when Goliath knocks them down. They act like, well, it's too big. And they don't get back up, or they try to get back up, and Goliath hits them again, because sometimes you just keep getting hit.
Yeah.
When I look at these big stories and the challenges that hit you and actually knock you down, what I do know is that when these things happen, that circle that you talked about, those people that are close in your life, those are your lifelines.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people like literally take a scissors to their lifelines and be like, I don't care, and cut them all and just leave. I've seen it. But for the most part, those lifelines are how people can recover.
Exactly.
And God said, the Bible says that God will never tempt us with something we cannot overcome. But as a little kid, I always thought that meant like, oh, that means I can overcome anything. It's like, no.
You can't overcome falling off a mountain. Like,
well,
it's not. You can't do that.
He said I could do
it. You're gonna bring me through this. Oh.
I believe in you, God. I don't need a parachute. But like, God will give you all the tools you need, or He will put you in a place, unfortunately, like He had to put you, where I need you to pay attention and I need you to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that growth in your life has made so much happiness and joy. But that does not mean it's easy. And the preparation that I try to tell people is don't think life's going to be easy. If you want to burn your bridges and you don't want to have close friends and you don't want to have family and you just want to live alone and be like the guy we talked about last time where he's like sitting on a beanbag eating playing video games, it's like when your life goes to crap, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
Who's going to be there? Who's going to give you advice? Who's going to sit down and pray and cry and guide you through the flames that you're going through? People that they shut themselves off and they have crappy character and they don't build themselves up and they're pretty much a menace to everyone around them. They act like, well, they can just do what they want. And then when life hits them, then they want to, everyone abandons them and like, well, no one's here for me. It's like, because you've never been there for someone else. You've never been willing to be there. You've never been part of this, microcosm, this family. But in your case, when you were going through the flames, everyone knew that wasn't you.
Right.
And everyone wanted to help you. And it took you like that one conversation that changed it all. But if you would have just thrown up the towel and said, no, I'm going to live in my misery.
Yep. I would be a completely different life right now. I don't think I'd be married. But then you got to also look on the other end of that, right? What if Mark didn't want to meet with me? What if? So I got a saying. It's be someone's cheerleader today. Be someone's cheerleader. Right? Not metaphor. I don't want you to get in a skirt and go with pom-poms. But there's so much negativity.
Fingers.
There's so much. You did that a little too well. There's so much negativity in this world today that be someone's cheerleader, be someone's positivity. When that friend calls you, answer the phone. Listen. Like there's a lot of, you talk about suicide and it's a terrible thing, and especially in veterans. But men kill themselves at a higher rate than women. Because men don't want to share their feelings. Men don't want to talk to people.
Men want to suck a barrel and tell people how they feel.
They want to bottle things up until it explodes, and that means they're putting a shotgun in their mouth. It's okay to talk to people. It's okay. It's okay to share your feelings. I think we've come a long way in it as well. They'd say like our generation, mine and your generation, have spent like 85% more time with their kids than the previous generation. And that's kind of how they were raised, right? My great grandpa was my grandpa was get off my lawn type of guy. To where we're kind of changing that, where we're hey, it's okay to have a bad day, right? It's okay to have a bad day. I'm not going to be 100% positivity every single day. It's okay for a grown man to cry in certain situations, right? I'm not talking about crying every single day over littlest things and being a pansy, but
my team lost again. Bro, that's just standard Cowboys fans.
Oh man, I would just say that, but you beat me to it. But it's okay. You've got to have a fine balance, and you got to have a fine balance. You can't go one way or the other. You can't be macho, super deal. Like tell your kids to get over it, get over your feelings,
rub some dirt on it.
Like we might have been told when we were kids, and you can't go the far opposite side because then you're just a pansy.
Yep.
We have too many of them today too. But
your feelings are valid. You broke the window because you didn't get the right ice cream. I understand. Yeah. In fact, break the other window.
I'm sorry.
It's like,
Yeah. My kids didn't have a closet in school to cry into. All right. We didn't have no emotional, whatever you want to call it, crying closet. All right. That's way too much.
Yeah.
You gotta have a fine balance. And one way of men don't cry, and it is way wrong. It's okay. And the opposite, where men are dressing like women, is way wrong. And so we gotta just find the balance.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the whole men crying and that kind of thing. I just had this conversation with Jameson, my son.
James.
So 2 of my kids are named after alcohol for not for that reason. We just like the names, and we realized it later.
We've got
It was
Jack
like,
and
it's like meet Stella. That's her name, Stella. So there's a beer.
there's a beer.
My middle
Pretty good beer
daughter,
too.
her name is not related to alcohol, but I should have named her something like Irish car bomb or something. And then Jameson. But anyway, Jameson, my son, he's about to turn 6 this year. So he's 5 right now. I am very deliberate about raising him to be a man. And he cries. He's a little boy. He cries all the time. That's okay. The one thing I won't let him do, or I encourage him not to, can't stop crying, whatever, is I'll tell him to do something that he really doesn't want to do. And I'm trying to teach him it's okay to be unhappy with what you're being told to do. It's okay to be unhappy with the fact that you didn't get ice cream, the fact that you didn't get to play a game, the fact that you lost, the fact, whatever. You can be unhappy. You can be sad. But there's a difference between being sad and whining about the situation you're in.
Yeah.
So literally recently, probably the last couple weeks, I'll tell him, like, he'll come downstairs and like, Dad, can I have some ice cream? And they just had ice cream. Or they just had a treat or something like that. Like, we had s'mores tonight. And he'll come downstairs and be like, Dad, can I have ice cream? I'm like, no, bud, no ice cream. And normally this is where the waterworks would come in and he would get really upset. But he's like, okay. And then he just walks away. And he's holding it in. And he's controlling it. And I tell him, come back here, bud. And I give him a hug. And I'm like, I really appreciate you taking care of your emotions, but it's okay to be sad. But sometimes you just don't get ice cream. And I'm trying to teach him that it's okay to show your feelings.
Right.
It's just not okay to whine about them.
To throw an absolute tantrum over not getting
exactly.
ice.
And this is the difference that I think a lot of people, people call it the toxic masculinity dad, where it's like, you can't cry, boys don't cry. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, everyone cries, everyone's got emotions, but you can't go far all the way left that your emotions are everything. It's like, my emotions are stupid. I've been an overly emotional person my entire life, and I can tell you, anytime I'm emotional, it's not a great day. I can have emotions, and I can control them to know that I'm just being emotional. I just am disappointed. I really wanted it this way. I was really looking forward to this. And teaching that balance is how you teach someone, hey, you're going to get the wind knocked out of you. You're going to be disappointed because the thing that you tried to do, you failed. You tried to face a challenge and it didn't work.
All right.
But if you cry anytime anything doesn't go according to plan and everything the whole world collapses, then you're not going to be prepared to face that challenge when you really need to cry.
Yeah.
Because it almost, if you cry for everything, when you really need to cry, it almost like lessens that emotional release. Like, there was a movie I just watched. So I had a trip this week and I was flying back on the plane. And there was a movie called, I think it was like The Last Flag Folding with Bryan Cranston, Steve Carell. And it was about Steve Carell's son, who was a Marine, died. And Steve Carell connects with a bunch of guys that were former Marines, and they're talking about it. it's a deep movie, lots of cursing, because they're Marines. But
goes to the territory.
yeah. But I got emotional because the dad lost his son, and I instantly started thinking of either losing my dad or if I lost Jameson. And I got emotional, and on the plane, I fought back a tear because, again, those emotions hit really hard. I'm not a pansy.
Yeah. Oh, bro, you
Like,
know how many movies I've watched that I've almost teared up at, or I've actually
Lion King.
teared up at? Bambi. Just joking,
But
not Bambi.
the point is, I cried in Bambi, but I haven't seen it in like 30 years. But the point is you you got to teach people that it's okay to have emotions, that it's okay to be upset, but that
Right.
doesn't dictate your response.
Right.
That
No,
I will fight like a freaking vicious warrior with tears in my eyes. I can fight while being sad.
Right. And that's one thing. Same kind of concept we teach, and my oldest daughter Darla, I have higher expectations for her than my others because she's older, right? So you think the older they go, the more mature that they should handle things. Well, she cries the when she doesn't get her way sometimes, and I get super annoyed with it. Or she'll pout and she'll let this one thing, like we could be having a great day. We went to Urban Air. We could have stopped and got ice cream, and then we get home and she wants to do something. No, not tonight.
Yep.
And she lets that one no ruin her day, dictate the rest of her evening. And I'll just straight tell her, this is what we're talking about. You can let this one no ruin your mood and make you a very annoying to be around to your sister, because she'll take it on her sisters, give attitude to everybody.
Yep.
Or you could not let it do that and realize that we just had a fantastic day. And we did a lot of things together for you kids. Like you can let this one thing ruin it. Or you can decide to not. And one thing, and I've got to work on, is, and my wife told me this, and she's like, and it's with any women, right? Because it's just how the male body works, the male mind works. When your wife is complaining about something, your first instinct is
fix it,
and that's not what they want. Newsflash, guys, that's not what they want. That's not what they want. They want you just to listen. That's it.
I think it's a great conspiracy. I think it's a lie. They want us to fix it.
I'm telling you. So the quicker you learn that in your relationship, the better it'll be. But my wife told me, she goes, when she gets in her teenage years, she's going to feel emotional about the stupidest things. And it's your job to validate that, even though you know it's stupid. Even though you think, are you kidding me? This is what we're doing. Suck it up. I want to say, just suck it up. She's like, you can't. You got to validate her feelings, let her cry on your shoulder, and then move on with it. You got to let her know that she can come to you with these feelings, because if you shoot those down, she's not going to come to you.
She'll go to somebody else.
And that is hard for me sometimes, because like, I'm fine with my kids crying, showing emotion. I'm fine with that. But it's when they cry over the stupidest stuff. Like, so, and I'm just like, I'm not going to listen to this. Suck it. Like, just, I don't tell them suck it up. I'm just like, shut up or go to your room, because this is literally, it drives me crazy sometimes. But that's something I do admit I do need to work on.
I changed my tactic with this, because
teach me the ways.
It drives me crazy. Stella is our current, like, she's always been way more of a drama queen. One thing will ruin her whole day. So the tactic that I changed to is, as opposed to like this symptom, it is kind of getting at the why, and it's that validation piece. So what I do I'll say it's something similar. You know, we had a great day, and then Stella said, "Can we go to Culver's to get ice cream?" Um, and I'll say no, and her whole day's over. As opposed to me saying like, you know, shut up, be quiet, stop whining.
Shut up.
You're grounded, whatever. I'll be like, I'll pull her aside. And sometimes I don't get to pull her aside, so I get to say this in front of everybody, which isn't great, but it is what it is. But I'll pull her aside and say, is this the kind of person you want to be? You want to be ungrateful? You want to be, you know, you want to whine about things? Because, like, why are you upset? Because I really wanted ice cream. I want ice cream. I love ice cream. Ice cream.
Who doesn't love ice cream?
But we just spent all this money, and we're not going to get ice cream because we can't afford to get ice cream, and we also don't need it because we've been eating snacks all day. But I really wanted ice cream. I really wanted ice cream. Do we need ice cream? I get it that you want ice cream, but is your life going to change because of this ice cream? And you, instead of getting upset with her, which is really easy to do,
Yeah,
I try to talk her in. I try to basically walk the dog with her of why her emotional state on ice cream doesn't make any sense. And it takes longer sometimes than others, but it's almost 100% success rate of I validate that she's upset. I validate that why she's upset. You want ice cream. I get it. You wanted to win the game. I get it. Everyone wants to win. But do you always want to win? What's the point in playing the game? If you always know you're going to win. If you always want to be the first one in line, you don't want to let other people have fun first. You don't want to bless them. You don't want to give them an opportunity. And by coming to their level and then explaining, like, this behavior is not what you want. I know this. I know who my kids are. My kids are good people. They don't want to be the annoying person. They don't want to be the whiny person. They're not selfish. But when they get in these emotional states, they're the most selfish little brats on the planet. And it's trying to explain in kind of being the dad, the rock that their emotions crash against is it's okay to be emotional or it's okay to feel sad that you want this thing, but try to understand why this makes no sense in the grand scheme of things. And think of it this way. Oh, this is how I think about it. We do this for our kids about ice cream. And then we get punched in the gut with life. And we cry and complain to God. And God has existed for eternity, forever. No beginning, no end. And this little complaint that we have is literally the same. Even in our grand scheme of life, 80 years.
Right.
2023 or 2024 was just the worst year ever, and nothing. There's no recovering from this, and I'm so sad, and life sucks. And it's like you do realize this is 1 year out of 80, right? You do realize this is one generation out of hundreds of generations of people that will be affected by you. And when you don't teach your kids the grand scale of their emotional state and how to overcome the challenges of not getting ice cream, then when they face these real issues, they have no scale of like, okay, that's right. I'm letting my emotions take over me. Life is sucky right now. I'm not happy. I don't like what's happening, but I get it. I can understand it. So that way when people face actual Goliaths in life, they'll have a reference point of, oh, this is just one of those times that I'm not going to like this, that I'm going to be uncomfortable, that this is going to be a challenge, that I'm going to need help. And maybe I just need somebody to tell me, like, to walk me through it, to help my brain understand, my stupid man brain understand. But that's what we owe to our kids, is teaching them that at this level. That way, when they go off in the world, it's not the first time they're doing it when it's a real life crisis.
100%. I can be better at that. I'm better with that at Darla because she's older. I feel like I can relate more to her than my little one sometimes. But I was on an episode. Speaking of telling stories and My Goliath, I was on an episode of The Blind Impact, and if you guys, it's an awesome podcast. You want to go check it out, feel free to. It's called The Blind Impact. And it's a lady that my buddy was on there, and he told me about it, and I wanted to share my story, and I shared the story I shared with you today, and told her about the My Goliath and all that stuff. Go look it up. She tells people stories. She gets people on. She interviews them. They tell her story. She asks pretty good questions. And one question she asked me about my story was, what would I have done differently? Looking back at it now, what would I have done differently to maybe get through it better or change some outcomes or whatever it may be? And I was like, it's a really good question. And one was, I would have leaned on God. I fell away from God. That's where I messed that up. Is God gave me this challenge in life, and it could have wrecked me. It could have pushed me so far away from God I never turned back. But He knew, because of the people in my life, the people I surrounded myself with, that I would get back on that path one day. And so that's the first thing I would have done was, hey, I should have leaned on God. Not, God says, lean not unto your own understanding, right? And the second thing was, my wife told me that we probably should have gone through some grief counseling together. Would have helped. And the reason I bring this up and looking back on it, and you could go through 3 of your Goliaths, right? You not just have one Goliath and, all right, I've hit my hardest rough patch, I'm gonna be good.
I'm done.
Sweet. I could hit it tomorrow. I could hit it 3 years from now. It all depends, but it's good to look back on those situations, learn from them, take away something maybe you would have done differently, and apply it to the next challenge. And it could be something completely different. My next challenge, God, I hope it is, because I don't want to lose another kid. But a great answer is always lean on God. You said something earlier, Caleb, that God will give you. There's a saying that says God will never give you anything you can't handle, which in a sense is true. But the part, it should say, God will never give you anything you can't handle, because through Him all things are possible.
Yep.
There are things in your life that you're gonna get hit with that you're not gonna handle, right? You're not gonna handle sometimes. But if you lean on God, God will get you through. I saw this the other day, and I brought it up. It's I really like it. It says choose your hard. There's sometimes we don't get to choose the hard that we go through. I didn't choose my Goliath.
That's John Deloney, or
this is just the motive. I don't know. I just saw it on Facebook.
I've heard "Choose Your Hard" from him before. I really like that. I really
like it. Yeah, it's really fun. And there's sometimes you can't choose your hard. You get hit with something.
It's chosen for you.
It's chosen for you. But it says marriage is hard, divorce is hard. Choose your hard. Obesity is hard. Being fit is hard. Choose your hard.
Choose your hard.
Being in debt is hard, and being financially disciplined is hard. Choose your hard. Communication is hard, and not communicating is hard. Life will never be easy. It'll always be hard, but we can choose our hard. Sometimes you can choose it, yes, and a lot of times you can. Like, I got to find that balance, and we talked about it, life balance, last time, but a life balance is going to be never ending.
Yep.
I want to be fit. I don't want to be overweight. I got 4 kids. I work 10 to 12 hours a day. I got to spend time with my wife. I don't have time to work out during the day sometimes, most of the time. So I got to choose. Do I want to be in absolute great shape?
Yep.
Or do I want to spend more time with my family? Do I want to spend more time with my kids? I'm going to choose that. So I might have a dad bod. It might be a little, choose your hard. And it's right. Marriage is hard. It's not easy. Molding your life together with another person and spending eternity with them, it's not easy. It takes work. It takes choice. It takes choosing that person every day when you wake up, right? But also divorce is hard. Breaking up your family's hard. The grass is
after this, I'm gonna go tell Kelsey, I choose you.
I choose you.
You're my hard.
You're my heart. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible.
On the next episode of DadBod Podcast, Caleb is getting a divorce.
Caleb's getting divorced because of what Brian gave him. Some advice. It was.
I thought it was great advice. No.
It was great advice. But divorce is hard, right? Splitting up your family's hard. I got a buddy of mine, who he has 3 kids, and his wife left him. And that is terrifying to me. Splitting up your child's time, not living in my house and being able to raise my kids how I want to see them every day. And he has no choice. He was 100% in, and his wife was 100% out.
Yep.
And that's terrifying. Now, I don't worry about that because I think me and my wife's marriage is not. It's not perfect. I think it's pretty good. I think she'd tell you it's pretty good. But that sucks. And I told him I feel so bad for you because you're all in and she wasn't, and she left you with. She left you, and now you've got to juggle working to support your child support that's going to go towards who knows what, and spending time with your that terrifies me. I want to be able to come home every day to my kids. One of the best part of working is getting able to come home on those hard days, walk into my door and have my kids give me a hug and a kiss. It makes my day. It makes life worth living to me. Well, that's terrifying to me. So choose your hard. And some people think the grass is greener on the other side. But did you water the grass on this side? Did you fertilize it? Did you put the work in? Because some people don't, and they blame everybody else, and then they bounce and find out that it's just life's hard. So choose your hard. Make sure you know who you're marrying before you get married to them. Choose your hard. It's a balance. It's a life balance, like we talked about. But looking back at lessons learned?
I think we covered what the challenges taught you, because we talked about that.
Yeah.
But I did have a thought. There's the guy Malcolm Gladwell. He did some research on the biblical story of David and Goliath, and I was teaching Sunday school years ago, and I looked it up because I was doing a lesson on David and Goliath. And a lesson on David and Goliath for people that have been in church and they're in their 30s, it's like, okay, he picks up some rocks and hits him in the head. Right. It's like, I've heard this 50,000 times, right?
All right.
But Malcolm Gladwell, who's a secular guy, I don't think he's religious. He did kind of point out an obvious oversight that I never thought of, is that if you've ever played a video game, if you've ever played a war game at all, there are characters that are better matched up against each other. So Goliath is a tank, a giant of a man, armored, giant sword, powerful. Well, he'll beat any other soldier because he has more armor, he's stronger, he's got a longer reach with his sword, all that. So if you're playing a game or you're in a war and you have a giant walking across, the field at you, do you send another soldier that's less powerful? No, because they'll get beat because they're matched in skill. You snipe him from across the field.
Right.
So in the world in that era, the sniper was the sling. So David literally was just really skilled with his sling. And while the story that we all were raised to, in church is, David with the power of God had it within him, and God pushed that stone into Goliath's head and killed him. Now that I've reread the story, David stood up for his faith. He stood up for God, and God did give him power. But everything David had done up to that point in his life was in preparation for that moment. So David used his sling to kill lions and bears. Those are challenges. I don't know if you ever killed a bear or a lion before, but David had perfected his skill set to the point where when he was faced with a challenge, it wasn't like God gave him this magical ability. God had already built him up to face Goliath. He just took action. He just had faith that God had prepared him for that moment. And live or die, David was like, no, I got this guy. That to me tells me that when I'm looking at my Goliath or challenges ahead of me, if I've been doing what God wants me to do, and and God wants me to face this challenge, then I have everything I need. Because, like you said, David relied on God. David had the skill. David had all the experience and training and all that because of everything he'd been through. But I guaranteed the one thing he needed was like a peace of mind, because it was probably terrifying. Everyone's behind him watching him, the entire nation of Israel. No one believes he can do it. They're probably taking bets that the little guy's going to get crushed. So when David was facing that challenge, I believe the one thing that God did outside of prepare him his whole life is give him peace in that moment that he was doing God's will. He was giving that to David. We probably already have all the tools we need to face our giants. It's about believing that, understanding that, and then leaning on God and saying, God, am I prepared for this? I don't know what to do. I feel lost. I feel like I need help. And sometimes you might literally hear, yeah, you're fine. You might feel like everything's going to be okay. And you're like, no, it's not. It's not going to be okay. But God might be saying, nope, you have everything you need because I've prepared you for this moment. And that different way of looking at the David and Goliath story really, really touched me and made me think of these challenges of just know that you might have everything you need already.
Right. And I think a lot of times too, and I need to be better at that even nowadays, is because God wants us to come to him. He wants us to come to him when life's hard. He wants us to come to him when life's easy too, right? And thank him and tell him how much, we're grateful for him. But he wants us to come to him when time's difficult. He begs us. And sometimes maybe that's all. Sometimes we might be going through something and we don't turn towards God because we think we can handle it ourselves. Especially, I don't know, men. I mean, I like to fix my own things. I don't like to ask for help, right? And if only we learn to humble ourselves and go to God in prayer and say, hey, God, I leave this to you. This is in your hands. Please help me with this. Sometimes that's all it takes. And God will say, oh, you humbly came to me. I'll help you with the situation. Maybe it's, giving you the confidence to use the tools he's already given you, right? Because let me tell you what, I think a big thing that Satan does is tell you you're not good enough. He's great at that. Telling you
He
you're
doesn't
not
have
good
to.
enough.
He doesn't have to fight you when you're doing what you're doing. He has to stop you from.
Right.
And that's usually where his massive success rate is people don't even try.
Right. Because they're afraid to fail. And like I said earlier, failure is a part of success. Because if you're failing at something, you're trying, right? It means you're still trying. So, well, I think it was a pretty good episode. Conclusion: you're not alone in this world, and you're not alone in these challenges. Okay, everyone goes through them. It's not a matter of if, it's when, and how are you going to handle yourself. be ready, right? We're all going to face those challenges. And sometimes you need a day, you cry, whatever. And then next day, let's pick ourselves up and get a plan and gain that confidence back. Ask God to help you and learn how to fight it. Put steps in, plan your way out of it, Caleb. I know you're great at planning things. I'm not a great planner. But get up and get back on the horse. And don't ever quit. Because don't ever quit. You got anything to add to that?
No, honestly, I think it's the matter of if it's gonna happen. If you don't think it's gonna happen, I don't need to prove it to you. Life will. Life will hit you.
Yes.
And some of the hardest hits the hardest hits in life come straight out of nowhere. And if you're not prepared to face the little things, when that big right hook hits you in the jaw, you're going to be down for the count.
What's Mike Tyson's favorite word? Says everyone has a plan until you're punched in the mouth.
That's so true.
100% true.
Plans don't survive first contact with the enemy. So,
all right, guys. Well, that was episode number 2. We'll call it My Goliath or whatever we want to call it. But thanks for tuning into the DadBod podcast. God bless and do better.
Do better.
Do better.
Out.